it's 10 after, so I want to use everybody's time well. And we're very glad, first of all, that Paula and Levi are with us from Netanya, and very glad that everybody is with us from wherever you are. Most of us probably here in 10025, but maybe some not. So we're very glad to see everybody. Just switch to my notes there. You know, I think anybody who knew Rachel Cowan knew that she was a really deep soul, an exceptional human being. Aristotle says, there are certain people who they live a life, and you can just tell by their virtue. You can just look at them and know that that is an exceptional person, an exceptional soul, an exceptional life well lived. And that was certainly true of Rachel Cowan. And for those of us, myself in a small proportion, but others of you in much deeper proportion, who got to know her, your life was always enriched by knowing this exceptional person. And so we were glad to make available to you the film. I'm going to assume that many, if not everybody, watched it on their own. And if you didn't, you certainly have the Vimeo and the password, and you can do that. So I recommend that you do that. And we're glad to have the filmmaker with us. Paula, so just, many people on the call know you very well, but other people not so much. So tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get into filmmaking? Tell us something about your life.
Okay, so right now I'm a documentary filmmaker. I started out, I grew up in Philadelphia, and where I knew Shelley Sklan, who's here. And then after university, a very academic studies, I came to Israel and moved to kibbutz. And I really loved the physicalness of tractor driving. And after 7 years in the kibbutz, I had decided what I want to do in the world. And I wanted to do something that was physical, and I wanted to be a social worker. And I suddenly realized that making documentary films was something that would be physical, and I could be like a social worker. So I started making videos and films, and I wanted to do it very personally. So one of the first videos I ever made was I filmed Rachel Cowan's friends in Israel. Actually, because of Rachel's involvement with the Cummings Foundation, and she was very involved with all sorts of movers and shakers in Israel. So I made a birthday card for Rachel's birthday, and I filmed all kinds of people, including Alice Shalvi. And when the Dorot Foundation, when Jeannie Ungerleider from the Dorot Foundation saw that birthday card, she said, "Why don't you make a documentary about Alice Shalvi?" And that launched my career. It was shown on ABC as a special. So Rachel was like from the beginning intertwined with my film career. And then I went on to make other portraits, and I always wanted to make a film about Rachel.
One of the stories that struck me in the film is when Rachel said about Paul, when she met him in 1963, when she was a student in civil rights, volunteering, and he was a journalist. You met him, Paul just always assumed that people had interesting stories to tell, which I thought was a great line. And do you want to reflect on that line? We know that she had an interesting story, but how did you know that this was a story that you really wanted to tell?
Well, first, I just wanted to spend time with Rachel. When you were with Rachel, you felt like whatever you said was interesting. And she was just so present with you. And so I always thought I would make a film about her. And then, I can't remember the year. I have these things written down. I went with Rachel and the American Jewish World Service to Cambodia and Thailand. And she taught everyone on the tour how to do listening, how to listen to people. And she, it was extraordinary. And then because Levi was connected to the first female Buddhist monk ordained in Thailand, Dhammananda, I convinced Rachel to come with me to Dhammananda. And they were both grandmothers running retreat centers. And I thought, this is an amazing story. There's just one little clip of that in the film. so I knew I just knew she was extraordinary, and I thought there was all the time in the world. So I finally, in 2017, I finally got her to agree to let me make a film about her. And we had all these plans. We were going to go kayaking in Alaska. I was already exercising so I could kayak. We were going to go on an encounter program in Israel, and we were going to go to Costa Rica. And it's going to be an amazing film. And we were all excited about doing it. And then she was diagnosed with brain cancer. And I would never have had the guts to ask to make a film about her once she was diagnosed. It just wouldn't be my style. But she said
they
that
have the link on their website.
Guys, if people on the call, if I can ask you to be sure you're still muted, okay?
So, so Rachel not only graciously agreed that I could make the film, she actually said that it helped her because she didn't have to write her memoirs, and it was really an extraordinary experience how she opened up to me during that time.
Well, she mentions at the opening line of the film, the last thing we need is another memoir. So you enabled her.
But she was doing a favor for me.
That's right. Do you have a favorite part of the film?
I just love everything. I love the old home footage and the old movies. It's extraordinary. I love how I just feel like she's still talking to me. Did you have a favorite part of the film?
Well, I get to pick out which clips I want to show. So, in a sense, I do. But certainly, the old home movies of her with the kids are just mind blowing, and the wedding pictures are just sweet beyond belief. But I also, I mean, it's one of the clips I hope we can show is the meditation pieces are incredibly vivid as well. I mean, it really conveys something of the power of her as a teacher in that vein. Conversely, are there any parts that were really that really posed obstacles for you that were really hard to put together? Are there things that you ended up leaving out?
There were so many things I wanted to put in the film that I couldn't. It took us a year to edit the film because there were just things I kept trying to put in. Her relationship to Israel was so complex, so interesting, but we couldn't fit it in. Her relationship to Brotherhood Sister Soul, which was so important to her. And we just couldn't figure out how to fit it in.
The training footage of her.
When after the film was finished, I kept finding other clips of her. She was on television on 9/12. The day after 9/11, she was with a priest and an imam. It was extraordinary. I was doing research on a clip for civil rights work, and totally uncredited, there was a video of Rachel Cowan as a volunteer in Cambridge, Maryland, listening to the news when Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney were killed.
Whoa.
And there's so many things I wanted to put in that I couldn't put in.
You have that clip?
I do. I can't share it, but it's on.
Oh my goodness.
I will share it with you, and you can share it with people afterwards.
That is totally amazing.
It's unbelievable.
By the way, I remember that 9/12 TV appearance, but I certainly did not know until I looked at you have the Land of the Sick article from Paul on the thing, and it begins on September 11th, 1987. I was diagnosed with leukemia, and I thought, whoa, that was a mind-blowing, everything that happened on September 11th for all years prior to this, will be connected to that date. Of course, the fact, and this is something that is explored in the film, and it's one of the clips I think I'll play for a minute, but of course, the fact that her husband went through, a fatal cancer, in the midst of a community that loved him very much and cared for him. And then, you know, X many years after that, 30 some years after that, the same for Rachel. And do you have any, like, do you want to reflect on that parallel story?
Well, there's more than that, because there's also, I think that Paul's parents' death was something that really brought them into the community. You know, it made them realize, I mean, I think she says in the film that it helped her realize the importance of community, but it was like a very like sort of public tragic, you know, that was a public tragedy. Rachel also sometimes said that she thought that, you know, gave Paul cancer, not that things work that way, but community. I think like one of the big lessons for the movie is how important community is. And both when Paul died, you know, the New York community was unbelievable. And also when Rachel was dying, she spent a year totally involved with community. And the lesson, you know, that you need the community before you get sick.
Absolutely. Does anybody want to use the chat function to pose a question or two, and then we'll maybe look at a few clips? Oh, I see.
Somebody asked in the chat, were Rachel Cowan and Cathyodine college friends? Yes, they were very close friends in college. And one of the most moving things after the screening, we had an opening at Athena Festival in New York on March 1st, just before the world closed down. And Cathyodine was at the screening, and she came up to me afterwards and said she was so happy to see herself on the screen for Rachel.
So this film was done a year and so ago.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. I noticed that the Vimeo page said IJS on it. Was the IJS, you know, very involved in? Did they sponsor it? Did they put it to?
No, they help me with the distribution, and I'm hoping that they'll make it part of a curriculum for wise aging or something. But everybody at IJS was very helpful and very connected. And
Nina Bruder writes, Sylvia Weber, we did send out the link in the shul email, and there's we're not showing the whole film today, but the link went out in the shul email, and you can get it with the password that's necessary. Nina Bruder asks about the gratitude party at the end. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Oh God, Rachel was unbelievable. There was, first of all, it's so sort of to think about this during COVID, to sort of backtrack a little. I thought sometimes that this movie would be really depressing during COVID because it's all about Rachel's intimate relationship with people, until I realized that a lot of her most intimate contacts are on the phone, which fits with our time during COVID. But the gratitude party, there was a schedule organized. A wonderful guy, Yoshi, helped their kids do it so that different people would stay with Rachel every night. And everybody came and helped her, bought her food, and she wanted to give back. So she arranged this incredible gratitude party. Also, the photographer, what's the photographer's name?
Oh, Frederick Brenner.
Frederick Brenner wanted, before Rachel was diagnosed, he wanted to do a picture of all the hundreds of people who've stayed at Rachel's house. What are you doing? Sorry. All of the hundreds of people who stayed at Rachel's house, he wanted to take a picture of them on her bed. And of course, he couldn't do it because she got sick, but then they, he took that photograph at the gratitude party.
So the one of the, first of all, on top of everything else, because I think probably most of the people on the call, at least at some level, are here because they had a relationship with Rachel, or to whatever extent they knew her. Certainly at Ansche Chesed, by the way, it bears saying what an enormous number of people still, more than 30 years later, however many years later, still tell me that the learner services that she ran were the most important Jewish experiences they ever had, which is totally amazing. But I think we're, many of us, perhaps maybe all of us, are here because of Rachel Cowan. But the beauty of this film, this visual storytelling, is really tremendously affecting. And I don't have an visual aesthetic bone in my body, so I'm totally in awe of how graceful this film was. And I want to ask you about one visual image that keeps coming back, and it's the pills. The pills. They're like part of this story. Do you want to say anything about how you use those images, or what those images, like how that spoke to you?
Well, I wanted the film, when we originally were going to make the film, I wanted to punctuate it with bird watching, because Rachel was, such an incredible bird watcher, and I thought that would be really meditative to have every, between scenes have bird watching, but she was no longer bird watching. But what she was doing with incredible concentration was pill taking. So it was something that was like repetitive and yeah, and it's such the fact that you can do chemo now in pills, it's unbelievable.
If you can tolerate it.
If you can tell.
Okay, so here's what let's do, folks. I'm gonna bounce through a little bit. I'm gonna show a few clips. We'll see how this is working. If it turns out to be a technical problem, you'll let me know. And I encourage everybody to think up questions and either hold them and put them in the chat later, or we'll see if we can have a little bit of transatlantic interchange. So let me, let's see here, wait a second. Take me 1 second. Small technical difficulties. There we go. Okie dokes. And I'll go to full screen. This is one of the scenes early on when she tells the funny story about the cute grandson joke and talks about what the heck happened to her.
Just starting with bringing to mind an experience of gratitude, and just bringing up the face, the place, whatever into your mind, and then letting that feeling into your body. Open, relaxed feeling. Shakyana for this moment. Something wonderful. What happened, and then some of you heard this before, but my son told me that his 5-year-old son, Miles Moses, who's called Mimo, is a jokester. So he says to Matt one day, Matt, hey Dad, what did the bird say when it was surprised? I don't know, Nemo, what did he say? He said, what the heck happened? So that's been my motto, you know, what the heck happened to me? You know? And it was, about 4 or 5 days I was having headaches, and I'm not a person who ever had headaches. So, but they weren't acute, but my doctor, well, I think it's a sinus headache, take this or that. And it didn't go away. And then on the Friday morning, I picked up the New York Times and I couldn't read it. He said, wait a sec, I need my friend Julia, who was Paul's oncologist. So I emailed Julia, I said, I'm having these problems with headaches, vision is strange. But my family, we've planned a trip of a lifetime Thursday to South Africa. Could you see me Monday and make sure it's okay to go to South Africa? And she called Sunday morning and said, get down to the emergency room right now. So I went down, and then there was a CAT scan, MRI, and they said, well, you do have a tumor on the occipital lobe of your brain. So on Monday, I met with the doctor, and then Tuesday was the surgery. So, now I have to start Monday, 6 weeks of radiation with oral chemotherapy 5 days a week. And the thing is, in my mind, not to think about prognosis. It's just like a life. And what do I want to do now in my life? What do I want to do that will seem to have meaning and purpose? And I'm so happy to be here and see all of you. I love you all so much, and this group means so much to me.
Awesome scene to have a Shechianu for this moment. I thought that was just a great line.
Yeah.
And that comment at the end, with this very grim, medical news, to say, I just want to figure out, how to live my life and what can I do that is meaningful. And the radiance of her face in that story is tremendous. Does anybody, do you or anyone else want to say a word about it?
Is that group at the JCC was so important to her. Yeah. And it's so interesting because you think sometimes when you have news like that, you want to go inward, right? You don't want to share it. But by sharing it, there were so many, I couldn't put in everybody in the group, talked about their experiences, and she was so good at telling her story in order to open up other people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anybody else have a comment? Chatted or otherwise?
I was struck by the Shehekianu. It never occurred to me, but it's so appropriate from a meditative point of view, from across all disciplines. Very good.
If you go through life and are able to say, even in a grim, spot in your life, this can be meaningful, and I'm glad to be alive and grateful to be here right now. I mean, I think that, Heschel writes at the end of Man is Not Alone that there's something just fundamentally misplaced about gloom. Like gloom, to walk through the world, this stinks, man. This is unfair. I should have a better deal than this. But that really piety and an attitude of chassidut towards the world is gratitude and the desire to be a person contributing to the mission bigger than oneself. And in that respect, she certainly exemplifies chassidut in the best sense of the term. So Nina Bruder notes, there's not a lot in the film about her relationship with children and grandchildren. Well, there certainly is about the early years of the feminist movement, and her sense about her comment about playing in the park with her kids and those great images. Paul, you want to say anything more about the familial relationship part of the film that was or was not on your radar screen?
Rachel was an amazing mother and an amazing grandmother. I think it was very hard for her kids when she was dying. Even her openness about it, it was hard, and it was hard. So I didn't want to bother them. I didn't want to intrude on the precious time they had together. So I let them have I let them have, her kids were with her very often, and her grandkids were with her very often, but I just didn't want to intrude.
Can I make a comment? In the scene where she's first learned about her diagnosis, I was impressed by the lack of anger or terror, but mostly a sense of acceptance. What the heck happened to me? Now, I'm sure there was anger, I'm sure there was terror, but it was so striking, the kind of sense of acceptance, and she's going to deal with it. I just wondered what your thoughts were about that.
Right. No, that she, didn't want to waste time on why me, and she didn't want to waste time on that. And she also understood how that would push people away, and she just didn't want to waste time. And look, it's an incredible ability to, not let the anger overcome you. And she was not constantly, happy or constantly. She did have, the moments but she dealt with them and worked through them with the help of meditation and with the help of friends. And
there's as what you just said, of course, there's there is an easy trap, to think that people are saints. No, nobody's a saint, okay? Everybody struggles, and everybody has best moments, and everybody has the worst moments. But it's true that when you can manage to integrate into a sense of purpose and into a sense of gratitude and joy, that's going to be able to carry you through the despair. And to be able to say, as she says in this film, that looking back on the year of Paul's illness and death, and I never met him. That was but he was, I came to the film many years after he had died. I think he died in 1988, and I came in 2001. But to say that was a beautiful year, like, that's an incredible thing.
Because it was a very difficult year. Yeah.
Okay, I want to show, first of all, I want to show a couple of still photos just because they're so extraordinary, of her in 1963 and then their wedding picture. I'm going to jump ahead to those. And in it, she talks about, and then later on, a little bit about her involvement at the Chavurah school and the impact that had on her Jewish life. So we'll skip ahead to that in a minute. I want to note, by the way, go back to the screen share. A note, by the way, that the Purple Circle Daycare, which has been around since the 1970s and still is around, but moved out of Ansche Chesed on Friday. They're opening up on Broadway in a few days.
There are people who could make a difference.
This is her with Cathyodine, and wow, look at that picture. Can you believe it?
So that picture was in Life magazine, but I spent, hours and hours and hours trying to trace down the issue where it was. And Rachel remembered the man's name, who she'd been tutoring. I can't remember it right now, but she knew him and had kept in touch with him.
And here is talking about wedding pictures.
Oh, God.
There's Paul and me at our wedding.
No, really?
Yeah.
I've never seen that picture.
No, I never thought to put it out. So cute. They were so young. How did we dare get married at that age?
Isn't that an extraordinary photograph? Oh, man.
Tom Hayden was at her wedding because he was dating her sister.
Tom Hayden was dating Rachel's
Sister.
What did you think of the Chicago 7 movie?
I liked, there was an earlier one that was better.
Oh, I liked it pretty well. I thought the acting was just amazing. I never think British actors do a good job on American accents, but I thought that Eddie Redmayne and Sacha Baron Cohen did a great job. Okay, now I want to just skip ahead a little bit to the spots where she talks about. I can't see the time spot. Let's see about here. Where are we going?
Oh.
And I wrote an article for the Village Voice about the ambivalence of being. So we started the Purple Circle daycare, and that was being kids to your moms, creating space for our kids while then we would go off to work.
What is your name? Where do you live? Where do you go to school?
At the Purple Circle daycare.
What do you do at Purple Circle daycare?
I read, I write, I work, and I play.
I took pictures for some of the articles that Paul wrote.
Wait, this is not the spot I want. I had to stop share for a second to get exactly what I was looking for. Hang on. I wanted to jump to minute 23:30. Let's see. Back to that. All right, now I'll get back to the screen share.
One more night to go. And I just remembered one of the it started. Jerry Rake, who was one of the teachers, started telling the Hanukkah story. And so from that, we started having a Hanukkah party. And then we would tell the Passover story. And that led to the Havarah School, which led to basically my Jewish education and Paul's Jewish education.
We went to a forum party and at the New York Havarah, there was a puppet show that was dramatizing the story of Paulas. And the Haman figure was really terrifying. And Matthew was running across the room. He just jumped into my arms. Mom, he's not going to kill me. He's going to just hack to us. They just, totally shocked us. So it was very clear to us how we interpret this experience, so that we really needed to do something about consolidating a sense of identity for the kids and teaching them both the joyous side of Judaism.
I feel totally fine and strong.
Anything you want to tell us about that scene or those parts?
Well,
of the...
what was incredible was Bill Aaron, who took those photographs. I was telling him that I needed something to illustrate. Maybe he had some pictures of Haman, and he said, I have photographs of the exact day when it happened.
Uh-huh.
So Bill Aaron, took those photographs of Matt jumping into Rachel's arms.
Well, those Bill Aaron New York Havarah photographs are, I mean, all those Bill Aaron photographs back in the day are great, but those New York Havarah photographs are wonderful. I'm going to pop up now the I'm going to pop up now the bit about the Cowan's death, the parents' death, and that's going to go into her discussion about her own conversion. And there's also a great picture of Jerry Rake and Marty Green around here, so we're going to show that. And then I'll show one more short clip, which is about the matzevot, the grave markers, and her comment, which is so incredibly touching.
Evening News with Walter Cronkite. Louis Cowan, former president of the CBS television network, died today in a fire that swept his New York penthouse. His wife, prominent in civil rights and consumer activities, also was killed.
We were so shocked when Polly and Lou died. You know, it was terrible. We were 36 years old. None of us knew what to do, kind of, for the A, the shock, B, how to plan a funeral, B, you know, all of that was really, really scary. The police came at 4 in the morning to tell us, and this was such a blow to Paul, such a blow.
Turned out that a lot of the Jews who had helped us set up this school, how to school for our kids, really almost forced us this issue. They made food for us, they took care of the food. They listened to us, and it was the first time I realized that religious community was really, really crucial at moments of tremendous sorrow.
After the fire, Paul got really interested in the question of his faith, and I got interested in the question of God, wanting to understand what could give place or meaning to this tragedy. And I found that I wanted to feel part of a bigger story. It's like, here's life, you're born, you grow up, and then you die in a fire. And I realized as I thought about it, I had no framework to put that experience. It was so ghastly. I realized I had no way to understand it or accept it or be with it. It was so horrible. And yet, what struck me was I came through this not cursing God in whom I didn't believe, but saying, I need help. So this is too big for me to process. On a spiritual journey, there's not an answer waiting for you. You don't arrive at a place of firm belief and conviction. It's the searching, and that this path was a path of searching that I wanted to be on, and then so then it made sense to convert.
First of all, it's an awesome photograph. Mark mentions that photograph, which I don't know who took that photograph or where we actually, I just gave Jerry, we cleaned out the offices in the midst of construction. I gave Jerry Rake the copy that was in the office. It is an extraordinary picture. The composition of that picture is amazing. Rachel is standing in the middle, and there's a kind of a Jerry and Sharon Strassfeld each holding children looking inward, and Mayor Cavalier's in the picture, Josh Gutoff. It's an amazingly, well composed, beautiful photo. If you know any more about it, you should say. But that other photo of her standing over the Torah is amazing. The description of a religious search, I think, is a great, vivid articulation of, what kind of spiritual search people should be on. Peter, you want to say verbally a word about your comment, your meditation group?
Unmute.
Yeah, no, sure. Just that Rachel's meditation group continues at the JCC on Wednesday mornings, and her spirit's very much alive there. And right now it's accessible by Zoom, and hopefully in the future it will be live again, and all are invited. So just to know that continues strongly.
If I'm not mistaken, I think you are in the picture in that scene with the Frida Kahlo socks in which she tells the story, right?
Yeah, they show my bald spot, unfortunately.
That's the best part, though. I like that.
I'm so sorry. It was a camera. It was a mistake in the camera. There was
Mistake of the camera.
Oh, bald spots. But you got nice long hair now, so it's cool.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to show one last clip, and Peter just said about her spirit living on. Well, that's something that she says herself in this very beautiful, and this is the last clip that I'll show today. She's talking about, I alluded to it before, about the year of Paul's illness, and then it culminates in the discussion of the gravestones.
Today is 2nd of February, so 10 days between my going emotions, which feels like it. Yeah, the truth that we don't like to face is that it's a very, very difficult disease. And many, many people don't do it.
Very often the partner of the person who's sick just has this very ambivalent role because they, on the one hand, they're not sick, but on the other hand, they have to do a lot of taking care and being strong and not getting afraid. And, I find there sometimes, and I relate to it all as if it's sort of a medical textbook, and then other times, I wake up in the night and I just think this is unbearable. Just feel much more empathy for him and admiration for him.
Say something about Rachel's space.
Basically spent together for years trying to defeat chemo, even for a year. This year is very beautiful because what we learned was that love is what matters, that we have to live out of love it, or we would be too stuck in it. Basically, it's all about me. Is that the cemetery? Yep, that's the cemetery. And that's black. It says Shaul Cohen Ben Abel Pauline Ayel Shalom. Looking at that, that's going to be me. Her spirit lives on. Or
Well, now everyone will know what to put on the matzeva. Is that in fact what they put on?
No,
No?
I put on a beautiful quote from a poem that she loved, about, how I'm gonna hold on to life as hard as I can, and when it's time to let go, I'll let go. I am spacing out on the name of the poet,
But it closes the film.
but it closes.
Yeah.
No, but it closes. Her spirit lives on. Closes the film.
Yeah, your spirit lives on close to the film, right? I didn't think I missed that poem, but that's, well, whatever. I mean, many people get a hand in that question, I suppose, but her spirit certainly does live on. She's an extraordinary human being and told an extraordinary story. Nina Bruder asks, how often did you film her, and how did she feel about having cameras around as she declined?
She was so gracious. She was so helpful and cooperative, and I kept asking her, are you sure? Are you sure? Do you want me to go on? But I think it helped her. It was like a third eye in the future, that she knew that not just her spirit, but what she wanted to teach. She wanted to teach people how to die. And this was the way to do it.
But when we stopped being a filmmaker.
Yeah.
Which was,
Yeah, and then right, but I was constantly touring. There were a lot of times that I spent with her that I did not film. You know, she was I didn't film her. You know, sometimes we just use her medical marijuana and get high and laugh. I didn't film that, and I didn't film some of the hardest stuff. When there was a choice between being a filmmaker and a friend, I always chose friend and turned off the camera.
I was missing, I think, some of the chats as they were coming in. Seth Martin and Rachel Tiven, right? We'd love to hear a little more about how the neighborhood has changed in the decades and how that shows up in the film.
That is so interesting. It's such a great question from them, because when Rachel and Paul moved into the neighborhood, it was not the Upper West Side of today. And
my father and Ansche Chesed.
And their Levy's father was very involved in that specific that corner, reviving Ansche Chesed, and
he drafted Rachel and Paul.
He drafted Rachel and Paul to come be involved. And, Rachel was, I think, sort of astounded at the, valuation of her house as time went on. And, maybe missed some of the more intense parts of the neighborhood. But, yeah.
I don't know if Janet or Peter wrote this, but they have a great little memory about the sukkah. Why don't you unmute and tell us that little story?
Yeah, it was, I don't know, 35 years ago, 36 years, I forget. It was probably about a year or so before Paul got sick. And we had a Shabbat lunch group and with tiny kids. And we all met at the Ansche Chesed sukkah for a dinner, with containers of leftovers and wild kids, throwing things. And Paul and Rachel walked in with a beautiful picnic basket, sat down, unpacked it, took out the wine glasses and the wine and cheeses and sat there eating this elegant meal, which I just sort of likened to a picnic on the Seine. And we all looked and we thought, oh my God, will one day we be able to be like this? And then it was just, Paul got sick right after that. And I remember how painful it was thinking of that memory and watching them. And then, everything sort of went south in that sense. But
they did know how to live. They lived.
That was it. It was like they
knew how to live.
With all the political, which was so important and real, whatever, there was an elegance to how they did it all that was really amazing to watch and to be part of.
And now that our kids are grown up, our meal would still be a mess. So it's
yeah, we dreamt of it, but not quite.
That's awesome.
I remember one story Rachel told about the first time they went to Rosh Hashanah services at Ansche Chesed. They got a babysitter for an hour because they were going to services, and lasted a lot more than an hour.
Little did they know. Mark Margolis, you want to say a word about what you posted about trying to get the honorary street name?
That's a great idea. What a great idea.
Mark, you still on the call? You want to unmute and say a word? Maybe he's not still on. But he commented, and you can email him directly, mjmargolius@gmail.com. He's putting together a petition to have that block of 101 as I guess Paul and Rachel Cowan Way or something like that. Was there another one?
That would be incredible.
Great.
Are you looking at the chats? Yeah.
Right. I was going to something about the neighborhood, by the way. A few years ago, maybe some of you guys saw this. Maybe some of you guys remember this in the first iteration. But there was, they washed a building and they pulled off coats of paint and stuff on West End Avenue. and they unveiled some graffiti, which must have been from about 1971 or something like that, that said, "Viet Cong women fight." And I thought, oh my God, that's a cool little piece of historical reality scroll onto the building from back in another day. Well, anyway, I'm so grateful for everybody who came on the call, and grateful to Paula for joining us, and Levi from Israel. And I see the sun has gone down.
Yeah.
And thank you all again. As we put out in the short email, the link to the video and the password, which I think is Rachel_2021. And if you haven't gotten a chance to watch the whole film, please, it's an extremely well spent hour and a little bit. And I hope you'll enjoy it. And we thank you for joining us.
Thank you all for coming. If anybody wants to private email me, you can get it through Daron, and I would love to hear more about if anybody else wants to show the film in any other context, or see any of my other films, you can call. And can you record the chat before you close the?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I don't remember exactly how to do that, but I'll figure it out.
Let's see, maybe I can do it. There's a little.
No, I got it. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, you'll do that. Thank you. It just.
And I'll send it to you.
I just wish we could go out for a drink now after the screen.
Yeah, I'll mail this to you. All right. Thanks, everybody.